Alrighty, well, welcome to the animation class. My name is Jay. Um, and for the YouTube people, kind of unexpectedly went over 100 subscribers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for a channel that I wasn't really expecting to do much other than house classes that we did here. So really excited to see that. The last Comfy UI class we did got a good amount of views, and so I'm happy to see what everybody else is wanting out of these videos or what classes they want in the future. So if you have any ideas or suggestions or anything you want me to go over, just go ahead and leave a comment, and then we'll see about it. But today, like I said, we're going over animation in Stable Diffusion. We have both automatic 1111 extension and as well as Comfy UI nodes that we can go over. We're going to start today just kind of talking about what this is, a little bit how it works, but I'm not as big brain as Brain himself. I can't really get into the nitty gritty of the technicalities of how it works, I guess. The extension is called Animate Diff, and here's the GitHub for the Comfy UI nodes, and I'll leave links for all this in the description, as well as on the classes. I think I left one of the GitHubs in the classes channel on the Discord, but I'll go ahead and leave any additional links I forgot to leave in there. But to start out, we're going to be messing with automatic 1111 first. So you can see I already did a quick little obligatory Steve Buscemi walking down the street GIF, and it looks pretty good. In the face, it's cursed, but that's a 512 by 512 for you. You can't do much about it. But the walking motion is fairly impressive. So before I show you how I got to this result, to get this started, of course, you'll go to your extensions tab in A1111. You'll go to available, you'll load, and you can just search animate diff. But in my case, I already have it installed. It'll pop up right here. You can just apply and restart the UI, and then when you go back, you should see a tab, Animate Diff. How I have it activated is just enable Animate Diff, but you'll need to get some models, and I'll include the links to those models as well. They're the motion modules, rather. So I'm going to include a couple Hugging Face links. There's a lot here, and we're not going to go over the motion LoRa's for automatic 1111 because I'm not entirely sure how those work yet on A1111. So we're just going to be going over the models here, which is going to be that V14, 15, and then 15V2, as well as a stabilized motion module that Galaxy on the Discord told me about, and it's honestly life-changing. It's very smooth. It's actually what I did. I did this one with the high stabilized, so the background is fairly consistent, and the motion, as it's described in the name, is very stabilized. So you can use, you'll find different uses for each module. I spend most of my time in the high stabilized, but I'm going to show you a reason why it's not always the best choice. But to get this working, you install your motion, you download your motion modules. So you're going to download these files. And I can't unfortunately show I can show the folder for my Comfy UI, where to drop those models, but in the automatic 1111, it also shows my real name in the file folder, and I'm not going to show that to you guys today. But to tell you, it's going to be in your Stable Diffusion Web UI folder, and then you're going to go to extensions. You'll find that Animate Diff extension, click on that, and then you'll see a models folder, much like in this node extension right here, where you have these models you can drop in there. So in Stable Diffusion or automatic 1111, basically there's almost no setup aside from that. You're going to go enable Animate Diff in that Animate Diff tab. You're going to select your model. In mine, like I said, I have stabilized high. And then it's as simple as pressing generate, of course, with your prompt and everything. And we'll go over kind of what happens from there. You can see it's working, and it's creating 16 different frames right now. Let's see how it turns out. Sometimes the walking prompt works pretty well, but then other times it's a little bit sketchy. Let's see how it turns out. Yeah, see? It kind of has just a vague idea of what walking is. And so kind of the difference with animate diff or say text to video, which if you guys remember when AI generated video was first starting to pop off, there was the coveted Will Smith eating spaghetti. If you guys haven't seen this before, it's hilarious. And at the time, while really creepy, this was mind-blowing to me. I was like, okay, you're really starting to make some progress here with this. You could see the Shutterstock watermark in the video here. That's because a lot of this stuff is trained on Shutterstock video for motion and everything. Now, that's very similar to while it's very similar to how Animate Diff works, it's not necessarily capturing the motion the same way. It was trained on specific motions, and most of the time when you put in a prompt, it's just gonna take a still image and add random movement to it. Now, sometimes that random movement results in walking. If it seems like the character should be walking, it'll make the character walk. So that's where it differs a little bit from like true text to video. Is you can't just say Steve Buscemi riding a motorcycle and it will get that right off the bat. In fact, I'll try that right now. Riding a motorcycle. Let's give that one a shot. And it's just gonna have he may be riding the motorcycle, but also it's just taking a still image and saying, yeah, this is probably what should happen. I don't know. That's kind of what I chalk Animate Diff down to, is just really cool motion GIFs versus actual video. Yeah, see, so it's just him on a motorcycle. He's not riding it, he's just sitting on it. There's a little bit of motion here. So it has a vague idea of what it's supposed to look like, but at the end, it's just a cool motion GIF more than anything. Now, talking about the settings here, the default settings it'll pop off with is 16 frames total, 8 frames per second, and I gotta say that's probably the safest place to stay. Now you can add in more frames. I believe in A1111 there's no limit to how many frames you can do. It's just a matter of how many you can do in a single batch. So like where you do batch size, like right here, and it will show you generating, say, 8 pictures at a time, it'll go ahead and do that. But if you have it set to, let's go 24, at least on my graphics card, I believe it should still do it just fine. But if you're running something in the 12 gigabyte VRAM area, it's gonna struggle just a little bit. So you're probably gonna want to stick around that 16 frames. But I do know, Induvo, you said you had 24 gigabytes of VRAM, so you shouldn't have a problem going up to 48. But one of the issues you may run into doing 48 frames is it'll lose its context. It'll start creating a new scene, basically. So it'll cut off at, say, the 24. That's pretty good. There's no motion in the background, but it looks like he's riding it. But yeah, it'll basically lose the context of the previous, say, 24 frames and start a new scene and just blend them together. So in this first 24 frames, he's facing this way, but in the next 24 frames, he may be facing the other way. Now that, yields some pretty cool results, but not very coherent. So if what you're looking for is coherent animations, you're still going to have to do a whole lot of work. And I've posted some pictures in the Discord, or some videos, I guess, some GIFs in the Discord where I have cut out the character and stabilized the background. I've in-painted things separately so it seems more coherent, but that, of course, requires a whole lot of extra work, which I am totally not opposed to. It's still good to have that artistic touch in animation, and this is, at the end of the day, just a tool to help you get to that result faster. Now, I've generated hundreds of these already, and A lot of them are just still pictures with a little bit of fluctuation between frames, and I still think those are really cool. But if you're looking for some more advanced or more intricate animations, you're going to be putting in some manual labor, and that's going to be fine. I think at the end of the day, it's a cool thing to mess around with. It's still got a lot of work to go. So as far as size goes, I've done 768 by 768, and it's still been okay. It takes, of course, a lot longer because keep in mind it's got to render that whole batch size, and once you start getting up there in size, it causes a little bit more pain. But on the other side of things, you will also run into an issue where the pictures start the animation quality drops tremendously. The higher your image size is, it'll start getting gray. And then at a certain point, if you try to go 1024 or anything like that, it's just going to be a gray blob of a picture or an animation. So you can see, let me do one more here. So let's open this up in a new tab so we have some context. So I'm going to drop it back down to 16, and we're going to compare the quality. I'm not sure if it's going to be insanely different, but I know that there have been times where I've done a ton of frames and the results were kind of shoddy. So let's see. This one I'm thinking is going to be a lot more crisp. Let's see what we got. Okay. All right, so let's compare the two. So we have this new one. They're fairly similar, but you can see this one has a lot more contrast. And so as soon as you start raising that frame count, you're going to start seeing either more fluctuation in the animation, or it's going to lose a lot of contrast. So just keep that in mind. And now there's a workaround with that with Comfy that we don't have access to here in A1111, but I just wanted to show kind of the simple setup. If you're very anti-Comfy or you're not really familiar with Comfy and you want to give this a shot, the extension in A1111 is amazing. It's totally a lot of fun to mess around with and pretty straightforward as I showed you here. Of course, you can change the frames per second. You could raise the CFG. Now, how much that'll help, I'm not entirely sure, because I've worked with various CFGs. Let's try that and see kind of what we're looking at. But I try not to rely on CFG for contrast, because your model should be handling it by itself. Now, one of the things that I have noticed here is that the VAE that you typically use doesn't work as well with the animation. And so it's not going to render. This is really good. So note to self, thanks to Anduvo, yep, you can raise the CFG and that helps out a bit. But also if you raise it too high, like you're trying to do a 48 frame animation and your thought process is I'm going to raise the CFG to 20, it's not going to look that good, I don't think. Because that's where you start getting that poor image quality. But as you can see, this worked out just fine, raising that CFG up to 10. I think that looks pretty good, and he is in motion. Look at him going on that bike. Tires are moving and everything, except for the background. So, obviously some limitations, but for some cool GIFs, and really that's all they are, they're GIFs. I don't look at it as text to video, like the coveted Will Smith eating spaghetti. So, keep that in mind. This is kind of a totally different level, or a different ball game than text to video. So, any questions on the automatic 1111 side of things before we move on to Comfy? Because there's a lot more to go over with Comfy. This is kind of it as far as automatic 1111 goes. I'm going to drink some water for just a second. All right, so Anduvo asks, does it also work with image to image? Now, if you're talking about taking an image and putting it into image to image, like a still image, rather, so like taking a still image, okay. Now, I've done that, and it basically just, the result is a still image with a lot of flicker. Now, I don't know if there's, I don't know the workaround with that with automatic 1111. I know you just have to raise that denoise up pretty high to get it to actually do something. But since you're image to image of something that's still, and you probably want to keep the same, you probably want to keep it as close to the still image as possible while adding movement to it, I haven't had a whole lot of luck with. The only time I've been able to do image to image is of another animation. So taking, not in automatic 1111, I'll go over the upscale method I use in Comfy, but basically what I do is I take this animation, bring it on over to image, and try to upscale it. And that works in Comfy UI. I can try it real quick while I got you. I think, let's see, let's go image to image. So see, it's going to bring a still image here. So let's give that a shot. I want to go ahead and bring that up 768. And my usual upscale is going to be 0.5 denoise. And of course, you are going to want to make sure that you have your motion module activated. So let's go ahead and give that a shot here. Let's see what it does. But as you can see, it pulled a still image, so I don't have a whole lot of high hopes here. I may be surprised. Oh, and this is going to take a minute. In the meantime, we can admire this wonderful unupscaled in-painted face. Okay, so I think this is going to nuke my automatic 1111. So that's, oh, there we go. 24 or 25 seconds per iteration. So it's definitely got some downsides there. Let's see. Okay, so not worth the time here. It's going to take up the rest of this class at 25 seconds per iteration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, call that good for automatic 1111, because I think you're going to have a lot better of a time upscaling in Comfy UI. See, it's going at it, but yeah, so see, it just made a, really, it's not even done. So far, it's just got a few frames here, but you can see that there's a lot less difference, or a lot less variation between frames. It's just a flicker of a still image. So did that answer your question well enough? I apologize. I haven't messed around with image to image too much in automatic 1111. I've done it a little bit in Comfy, and like I said, mostly on an upscale basis rather than taking just an awesome still of like just a regular art piece that you did and trying to add motion to it. It doesn't work as well as you'd hope it work, but it's still there, and it may just add this little flicker. So I am going to stop this because I do not want it taking up the rest of my VRAM. Get rid of that guy. So moving on to Comfy UI, because there's a lot more that's going on here. And like I said earlier, you can go on over to this GitHub. I'm going to leave a link in the description of the YouTube video. This is actually Animate Diff Evolved, which Galaxy here on the Discord server told me about. And it's basically, there was another version of Animate Diff for Comfy that was very limited. You couldn't adjust any settings. The only settings you can adjust is your frame count and your frames per second. Everything else, you'd better hope that the module takes care of it for you. But if you go ahead on over to this GitHub and clone it into your custom nodes, or as I mentioned here, if you have the Comfy Manager, which don't tell my wife, I still don't have the Comfy Manager because I'm lazy and I have almost all the nodes I usually want, and I really like cloning things. I am a big fan of the git clone, so I will usually just git clone everything. But you can get that in there, and it adds a lot more usability in the nodes that you'll be using. So also, you're going to need to make sure you got those motion modules, both these guys, the stabilized one that I was using earlier, as well as the main ones here. You have V14, 15, 15V2. Then you'll see all these other ones. So back on over to the custom nodes page in your Comfy UI folder, and I have Comfy UI Animate Diff Evolved. you're going to drop the motion modules, the 141515v2, and the stabilized ones in here. But you'll also notice that there's all these other files. And yes, you can do motion LoRa's, which are limited to like camera movements. And those, they're really cool, but I'll show you some limitations that they have as well. So before I go into how I made this, you can see right here is the stock, the base workflow that you get in Comfy as soon as you install it or you hit load default. And I have the tilt up motion LoRa, and you can see it is very much tilting up, which is super cool. Some great camera movements you can mess around with, and I absolutely love it. Now, as I was telling you, there's a lot more customization in the nodes than you have in Automatic 1111. So we're going to go over how this was made. So I'm going to go back over to the default one, and here is your default workflow. So to get started, we are going to go ahead and search animate, and it's going to be this ADE. Ignore this stuff. This is the old modules, which, like I said, they're very limited. You just got the size and the frame number. What I want to do is use that new one. So first we're going to go ahead and load our model. So this will be our motion module. We're going to stick with stabilized high for now. What you're going to want to do, much like a LoRa or a control net, you're just going to make sure you intercept your model. So you're going to connect that to your checkpoint loader and then connect the other side to your K sampler. And you can actually get started right now. But I'll tell you what'll happen if you just hit Q prompt. It's going to load that. It's technically going to do something. And that's your result. What the heck happened here? Well, you need to specify the amount of frames right here. So your batch size is your frame count. I'm going to go 16. And this may work or it may not work. There's one piece here that I haven't added yet, but I want to see if it does anything without it. Give that just a second. It's working on it. All right, and so there, but it's not animated. See, it just generated the frames, and now I have all these different frames saved in my outputs folder. So how do you make it a GIF? Well, we're going to get rid of the save image, go back to search, animate, and you're going to go to the ADE animate diff combine. This is what generates your GIF, or this is what stitches it all together. What I like to do is I also save the frames themselves. So I'll also have a save image node here. So it saves the individual frames as well as the GIF, because in the event that you want to put in some manual work to each individual frame, or you like how the background looks in one frame and you want to cut out the person, say it's a portrait or something like that, or video of a person, you want to just get the background stationary or static rather, you can take that one image and you'll have the full quality images versus the compressed GIF. But for now, we are just going to use this one. We're just going to create the GIF. And then it's going at 4. Oh, interesting. It defaulted to 4. I don't recall setting it to that, so I'm not sure if the default frame rate is going to be 4. But as you can see, there you go. Not a whole lot happening here. I'm going to bring that back up to 8 because it is slow and bothering me. But not a whole lot going on here. I'm going to do one more just to see if it does anything else cool. Give that a moment. And you can see even a 4090, it chugs along with this. So you really want a decent amount of VRAM to do this. Now, anybody who doesn't have at least 12 gigabytes of VRAM, I don't know if it will still work for you, especially in Comfy, considering you have that option for the tiled VAE, the encode and decode. I would like anybody who tries this out on under 12 gigabytes of VRAM to let me know in the comments if this worked for them or what they had to do to get it to work, what settings they had to compromise on. Be really interested to see how that works out. So anybody tries that, just let me know. I'd be happy to look into it. But yeah, very minimal motion here. Not a whole lot going on. This just might be because of the minimal prompt and the lack of context. Now, you see you have these two inputs on the loader node here. So I'm going ahead and animate uniform context options. So this controls your context. Now, what is context? Well, it's kind of the length of the context of the frames. For example, if I were doing 32 frames, I'm wondering if this is gonna blow up my PC. But the context is only 16. In theory, the image is going to change, or the video is going to change in that halfway point to a totally different context. So let's give that a shot. It may not, just because of the minimal amount of motion we're already getting, but I wanted to give it a shot here. Does anybody have any questions thus far in the Discord? Like I said, the animate nodes and the extension in Automatic 11, they're not rocket surgery, luckily, so it gives you a lot of freedom to mess around with it and try out different things. Okay, so yeah, you see in that halfway point, it totally changes up, but you saw that blend, right? So the blend is going to be your context overlap. So for 4 frames, it is taking what it knows about the previous 16 frames, which is our context length, and just kind of blending that in, which makes for some really cool trippy stuff. But if you're looking for consistency with a character or an object, anything like that, you're going to want that context a little bit higher. Now, the problem is, let's try setting the context at 32, and I foresee an issue. Yeah, so without context window, animate diff stabilize high has upper limit of 24 frames. So the 24 frames is the maximum context length you can have. And so that's where some of the limitations are. So if I go back down to 24, we should see a longer first part of the animation. Oh boy, that's going to take a second. Now, I still think this is really cool. This is really fun to look at. Even just the default workflow and prompt, it's really fun to look at, and it's fun to post it on social media. I have dozens of these on my Mastodon, and they're great. There's going to be a lot of work being done to these motion modules. I could see in the future where you get maybe LoRa's of people walking, or more than just camera movements, which we'll get to here in a minute. All right, so this one didn't do much because there wasn't any motion. Sometimes you get these where it almost feels just like a static image with a little bit of GIF artifacting. So we're going to skip back on over to our context, bring it back down to 16, because like I said, that's a very comfortable spot to be hanging out in. And we're also going to change our batch size back over to 16 as well. Now let's talk motion LoRa's. As you saw, this is a very static image. Nothing's happening here. And even in the other one, yeah, stuff was happening, but it was really just a morph GIF than anything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in that motion LoRa, which, as I showed earlier, if you go on and add those in, you should see them right there. And you'll go to search, animate, LoRa loader. And I see I already have one loaded up here, the V2 LoRa pan left. Now I'll show you what happens when you use it on the stabilized. Unless I'm wrong, and all my results from testing before I started this class were just giving me one result, the stabilized one shouldn't work with these LoRa's. So let's give it a shot here. And nothing's happening. It's not panning left. Now that's because it's not compatible. The LoRa's aren't really compatible with the stabilized, or I even think the SD 1.4, let's try that, should give a similar result. Let's see what happens. There's movement going on, but it's not quite that pan left. Now what I found is the motion LoRa's only really work with the 1.5 V2 motion module. So we're going to give that one a go. Let that one load up. And the recurring theme of these different models is the stuff still looks really cool. Still a lot of fun to mess around with, and it's totally new ground to be messing with too. So you can see you got that pan left, but one of the downsides, we're going to talk about that 1.5v2 module, is the Shutterstock watermark. It is the bane of my existence, and you're going to see that in a lot. That's why I don't really use the 1.5v2 module, is because of that watermark. But as you can see, it's panning just fine. Like that's really good. Then we're going to try another one. I'm going to do rolling clockwise. That one was a really cool one I tried earlier. And what I'm going to be researching it a little bit over the next few weeks. And if I find a way to train motion LoRa's, I will certainly let you guys know. There we go. So it's rotating. It's really cool. It's losing coherence. Like it has no idea what's going on here. And like I said, that Shutterstock logo, I don't like it. It's not worth the motion LoRa for me to have a Shutterstock watermark in here. I know in the previous 1.5 version, let's try it out on the just regular 1.5 v1, see what happens with it. But I believe that this had less of a problem with the Shutterstock logo, but it didn't respond to the LoRa's as well. So let's give that a shot and see what happens. Yeah, so you could still actually kind of see the watermark in here. And then also no motion. So what's the deal with that? I think it's just they're trying different things out. Person who makes these models, there's still a lot to work out. Video and AI is fairly new, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So I'll take what I can get. Personally, I have found the best results from 1.4, or sorry, 1.4 or V1.4, and then the stabilized mid or high. Which is why I haven't, until today, to test it out to show you guys, haven't really messed around with the motion LoRa's. So they're really cool, but you at a cost. And the cost is that Shutterstock watermark. So let's give this something else to work with here. I'm going to tell it to make a white. Let's give it a truck. Dodge Ram in driving on highway. And let's see what we got here. Now it's going to be really weird with the motion LoRa, but I just wanted to give it a shot here. Any questions thus far on the motion LoRa's, anything like that, the different versions? It's definitely driving and it's definitely spinning. So get rid of the motion LoRa. I'm gonna go back over to 1.4. Give that a shot. Now that's what I'm talking about. So you can see, while it's still a little wonky, that's definitely a Dodge Ram driving down the highway. And that's pretty cool. Now, earlier on, I told you that we'd talk about image to image, or rather an upscale in Comfy. So what I'm going to do is just that. I'm going to move my decode down here. I'm going to clone my K sampler. Make sure that model is also hooked up there. Lower my denoise to 0.5. Like I said, that's my preferred. And then I'm going to go, let's see what's next. Get my prompts taken care of. And then my latent, which is going to be BAE encode. Ups. That's not what I wanted. Upscale by pixels. My latent. And I'm going to upscale it by 1.33. connect that up to my VAE, clone that D code, connect that to the VAE, and then the output should go here. So with this being hooked up, oh, I did not connect that right. With this being hooked up to the animate diff loader, it's going to take all of those frames and still keep that same motion. But it should upscale it without a problem. So let's see if my computer explodes today. Give that just a moment here. Let's see what I'm looking at. Yeah, 1.13 seconds per iteration. It's totally doable. There we go. So I open this up and it's at 680 by 680 now. Now that is motion right there. It's really cool. Let's see if we can upscale it. I'm gonna go a little crazy because that did a lot faster than I thought it would. Let's go 1.5. Give it another go. And I'm gonna fix this seed so I can use it again. One point five 1.5-ish seconds per iteration. Not too bad again. Now, if you were to do that, like I said earlier when we were going over the automatic 1111 side of things, if you had your initial size of the image up too high, say you were trying to generate a 768 by 768 in the initial text to image, you'd probably run into some contrast issues and also less detail in the background. Hey, this one put a little camper on it. Now, doing the upscale is a lot better way of doing that. Of course, it takes a little bit longer, but you're going to get better results pretty much every time. What size did this? I don't know how to math. 768. Okay, yeah. So there's your 768 image. And honestly, it looks pretty crisp. Even though you got that weird camper showing up there, it's certainly doing exactly what I prompted it to. So pretty neat stuff here. Cool. So aside from that, there's not too much else to go over. Like I said, you're gonna see some differences in those different modules. Like I said, my personal favorites are going to be these stabilized ones. The mid stabilized is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to kind of be your 50% stabilized, and if you're not looking for, like if I do this, it's going to be either motionless or it's going to be like this weird warp effect, which it already kind of has, but it's going to be a little bit weirder, I assume. This is already fairly stable, so how much better you can get from that, I don't know. Now, one of the cool things that I've done with the output is you could still apply your filters to it. Any filter that can take more than one in a batch size can be used. So what I've been using is this anime line art preprocessor. And I'll let this one finish up here. Let's see what we get. So yeah, you see that stabilized. It doesn't have as much motion, and things end up being a little bit weird. So if you're trying to get motion, that stabilized is going to give you a little bit of a headache. So we're going to go on back to 1.4 and check this out. I'm going to intercept with my line art processor. We're going to do the same thing we've been doing. Let that generate real quick. And then we'll get into a couple generations of stuff that I'd usually actually make, like portraits of people, and show you kind of some of the stuff that you can get from that. The little dodge that could. It's almost there. Now, you see, I forgot to do something here. I forgot to invert the image, but this is kind of what you get. Just imagine inverted. I'm not going to go over inverting it right now. So just an extra node. But you can make line art animations too, or any filter, like I said, that can accept more than one in a batch size. There are some where it won't let you do that. I do know if you tried to do like your image filter adjustments, it doesn't react near as well, which I know very few people who use this. I use it because in my portraits I like adding some extra contrast, maybe a little bit of saturation. Keeps me from having to mess with the CFG as much, and I'm a photographer by profession, so I do like using any sort of Lightroom-esque settings in my AI art. So but yeah, that concludes kind of the how to do it. Um, as far as actual utilization, I think this is very close to usable for little short films. If you have that kind of patience, if you have LoRa's created for or trained for characters, definitely worth using that as well. I've used style LoRa's. I haven't really messed with character LoRa's in Animate Diff, but there's no reason it shouldn't work. So technically speaking, if you were looking to make a short film out of this process, it's totally doable. It's just gonna take a while. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to go over on the comfy side of things. Like I said, a bit more involved than Automatic 1111. So, yeah. Anybody have any questions there as I start prompting away and doing some other stuff here? Duvo asks if I'm going to share a JSON file. Yeah, I can. For this specific upscale, you mean? Because like I said, there's really only 3 nodes you need to add in if you want to get started, and this was done off the low default. But I'd be happy to share this. I'll share this JSON file with you if you'd like it. I'd be happy to. But like I said, there's really only a few nodes you need to add in here. 4 if you're doing the motion module. So like I said, this is as easy as text to video gets, or text to GIF. I don't like saying text to video because when I think text to video, I think spaghetti. So, which is totally different. Okay, run this prompt here. Should probably randomize my seed here. So what I want to know, both in the Discord and the YouTube comments, what do you guys think this will be used for in the long term? Like, say that it gets better, the modules. We see the version 2 of this module just blow this current one out of the water. What do you see this actually being used for in its kind of current state and slightly in the future? Like I said, I think one can create short animated short films if you had the right amount of patience. This one's cool. There was one video I saw on Reddit where a guy made with a runway. I'm not super familiar with it, but I've heard a lot about the runway animations. It's an online thing. Made an entire like pirate short film, and it was baffling how coherent it was. Like none of the characters were, of course, consistent, so they just cut to different characters every scene. But it had a pirate ship. And it had like a kraken or something like that. Bunch of close-ups of decent looking pirates too. Like everything was fairly coherent. Unlike this, as you can see, this one wasn't that great of one, but there is certainly motion going on. Let's give it another go. This would also be a cool thing to use for animated Discord profile pictures. Thinking I might take my current profile picture and run it through here at some point, try to add a little bit of motion to it. Let's let this one go here. Oh, it did the same picture. That's right. We'll give it one more go, and I think we'll be just about done here. So, yeah, highly recommend giving it a shot here. Serves to let you guys know that it does not work with SDXL models at all, and which is fine considering the amount of VRAM that this already takes with a 1.5 model. So I'm not really hurt by it. I tried it. I tried a couple different things. I tried taking the individual frames and running through like an image to image through SDXL to get like some additional quality. But of course, you'll run into some flicker because you're not connecting it through that animate diff loader. And so it's just going to do a rough image to image of each frame. And it's not going to look super consistent like this does. That is really good. I'm saving that one. And which one was this with? Did I do this with 1.4? Yep. So I did this with 1.4. And it's already fairly stable. So that stabilized, it's really if you're looking for like less flicker, I think. But less flicker means less movement, and so use it at your discretion. Aside from that, I think everything else, I don't really have anything else to go over here. One last chance for any questions. Be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I think we're all done here. Alrighty, well, if no questions, I appreciate you guys coming along. For the YouTube folk, thank you for watching. If you didn't know, we have a Discord, a decent user base of wonderful AI artists who would love to talk with you. If you're learning AI art or have any questions, we're happy to help you. Feel free to reach out to me, Pixarworld AI on Discord, as well as our Mastodon, aipub.social. We'd be happy to have you there. Go ahead and share your stuff, whatever you come with. We'd be happy to see it on there as well. If you'd like to see more classes like this, of course, you can join our Discord. We do these live, so you can ask any questions along the process. Do what Induvo did and tell me to increase my CFG and totally school me on that one. Didn't think about that one, so I appreciate you bringing that one up. So thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.